The U.S. tried to end the Iran war in less than a day. One whole day. A war that has shut down 20% of the world's oil supply, sent gas to $4 a gallon, and the IMF is now saying could send the global economy to the edge of a recession we haven't seen since the 1970s. We had 21 hours, talks completely collapsed, and now things have gotten worse and weirder. Plus, Congress is back, and things are also weirder there. Today is April 14th, 2026. My name is Grant Hermes, and this is Make It Make Sense. So let me give you some context here. The Strait of Hormuz, this narrow strip of water between Iran and Oman that carries 1 in every 5 barrels of oil on the planet every single day, is under the control of Iran after the U.S. attacked. And right now, almost nothing is getting through. 3 ships have made it through in the last 24 hours. 3. That number is closer to 60 normally. That's why gas is over $4. That's why the IMF is now using the recession word. And it's why Saudi Arabia, a country that basically swims in oil, is begging the Trump administration to stand down. Everything that happens next flows from this one checkpoint. So let's talk about what actually happened this weekend. Late Saturday night, Vice President J.D. Vance, who was leading our side of the peace talks with Iran, held a press conference and said, "We got nothing." Here's what he said.
We've had a number of substantive discussions with the Iranians. That's the good news. The bad news is that we have not reached an agreement. And I think that's bad news for Iran much more than it's bad news for the United States of America. So we go back to the United States having not come to an agreement. We've made very clear what our red lines are, what things we're willing to accommodate them on, and what things we're not willing to accommodate them on. And we've made that as clear as we possibly could. And they have chosen not to accept our terms.
The Obama nuclear deal, which Trump killed in 2018, took 2 full years to negotiate, and that only covered one of the issues Vance was supposed to solve in a single day. Here's what was on the table in Pakistan. The U.S. wanted Iran to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, stop funding Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthis, limit its military, non-enrich uranium for 20 years, and hand over what they already have. Iran wanted the U.S. to remove every troop from every base in the Middle East, stop attacking its proxy groups, pay reparations for the war, lift sanctions, give Iran the permanent right to enrich uranium with zero international oversight. Both sides came in asking for everything and offering nothing. That's not negotiation, that's performance, right? And the U.S. walked in from a real position of weakness. We have low missile stockpiles right now, no real allies except Israel, which has kind of gone rogue against Lebanon, a war that's deeply unpopular here at home, and record high oil prices already squeezing American wallets, which is making the war really unpopular. So, of course, these talks didn't work. The question is, what comes next? And here's where things go off the rails. Sunday night, Trump goes on one of his late-night social media runs that question whether or not his mental health is okay, and he announces that the U.S. Navy will be blocking oil tankers from leaving the strait. And conservatives immediately called this Trump's 5D chess masterstroke, an Uno reverse card for the ages. And I get the logic on this, right? On the surface. Iran blockades the strait, we blockade it back, and now their oil can't get out either. Or here's how J.D. Vance put it.
When it comes to weapons of war, what they have done is engage in this act of economic terrorism against the entire world. They basically threatened any ship that's moving through the Straits of Hormuz. Well, as the President of the United States showed, 2 can play at that game.
So, first of all, I don't know if what you heard there was how the Vice President meant it, but what the Vice President just said was that we saw Iran engage in an act of terror, so we thought we should do that too. I don't know. Anyway, here's the problem with Trump's "I know you are, but what am I" against Iran. Oil is a global market. Blocking tankers doesn't lower American gas prices. It just means oil companies make more money while you pay more at the pump. Those are 2 different things. And can the U.S. actually replace what the strait produces? Let's do a little math here. The strait moves up to about 20 million barrels of oil a day. The U.S., the largest producer of oil in the world, pumps around 14 million barrels at its absolute peak capacity. We would need to nearly double our maximum output overnight to just cover the gap. That doesn't happen, not in weeks, Not in months. Well, what about Venezuela? Some people on the right have been pushing this idea that we now have access to Venezuelan oil. Problem solved. Not really. Here's the thing about that. Venezuela does sit on the largest reserve of oil on the planet, but the infrastructure to extract it is so destroyed that the CEO of ExxonMobil, a company that made $332 billion last year, looked Trump in the eye and called Venezuela uninvestable. Industry experts say it would take 10 to 15 years to rebuild Venezuela's oil infrastructure just to get things up and running again. At its absolute peak in the 1990s, Venezuela was producing 3 million barrels of oil a day. Again, the Strait of Hormuz moves 20 million. The math there isn't mathing. And while all of this is happening at the diplomatic level, there's a story in the Strait itself that deserves way more attention than it's getting. The UN's Maritime Organization has documented 19 attacks on ships that are anchored in the Strait and have been since the war started. 10 crew members have been killed. They're calling it a crisis that the world hasn't seen since World War II. These ships aren't built to just sit there for 50 days. They're running out of food, they're running out of water. One Chinese vessel had crew members collecting condensation off air conditioning units and throwing fishing nets over the side of their tanker to catch dinner. One captain talked to The Guardian and called a mental health hotline after a nearby tanker was attacked. He said he was overwhelmed and wasn't sure that he could handle how he was feeling, and said that he knew that he couldn't let other people on board see him cry. This is a ship captain. These are real people stuck in a real geopolitical standoff with nowhere to go, and one that the United States pretty much made on its own. Now, this morning, the International Monetary Fund, which is basically like the world's accountant, said that the global economy is on the edge of a recession if the Iran war continues. The head of the International Energy Agency said this oil crisis is worse than 1973, 1979, and 2002, all those crises combined. They said that the UK economy is likely to be the worst hit. Now, when he was told this, the response from the U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent was, I wonder what the hit to the global GDP would be if a nuclear weapon hit London, which, less than a week after Trump's threat toward Iran was widely seen as a nuclear one. I don't know if the Treasury Secretary bringing up nuclear bombs hitting a major European city is the best use of an economic press conference. It's also worth pointing out that Iran doesn't have a nuclear weapon, wasn't close to having one before the war, and also doesn't have missiles that can reach London. Regardless, here at home, gas is holding steady above $4 on average, depending where you live. You might be looking at $5, even $6 out on the West Coast. The average is up $1 since Trump took office, 55 cents since Biden's last year in office. Wages did rise last month, but so did inflation, which basically ate the entire raise we got. So, what happens next with Iran? Well, the U.S. and Iran are trying to broker the next possible round of peace talks back in Pakistan, maybe in the next few days, but right now nothing is set in stone. Saudi Arabia is asking the Trump administration to back off the blockade so that some oil can get through because the Middle Eastern Gulf states are 100% dependent on oil that comes through the strait. And the UK and France are holding some kind of Zoom, Microsoft Teams breakout session with a multi-nation group hoping to make the strait safe for ships again. We just don't know who those countries are or what that would mean or even when that could start, given that the war isn't even over yet. Okay, before I end the episode, I have to shift gears because I have to talk about Congress. Congress came back from spring break this week, and I'm going to do a full episode about this on Thursday, assuming something doesn't happen before then, but there are things that are happening right now that I can't let slide. First, Maryland Representative Jamie Raskin has filed a bill to create a commission to assess presidential health and fitness under the 25th Amendment. That's the amendment that could remove a president from office. Now, this mechanism has existed in the Constitution since that amendment was written in the 1960s, but has never actually been formed. Raskin is now pushing for it after Trump's late-night post on Sunday, where he shared an image of himself as Jesus Christ and then said he thought it was him as a doctor, but also after Trump's post last week, where he threatened essentially nuclear war on Iran. Second, 2 members of Congress are resigning over sexual misconduct and assault allegations. And just a trigger warning for some of you ahead. Texas Republican Tony Gonzalez, who had an affair with a young staffer who later died by suicide, announced his resignation several days ago. That story broke months ago, but barely made headlines, but Now he's also facing expulsion on top of his resignation. The other resignation is California Democrat Eric Swalwell, who was a rising star in the party and a leading candidate for governor. He's been accused of sexual assault and misconduct by multiple women, including an allegation from 2018 involving drugging a woman. That story broke through a liberal content creator before the press picked it up. Now, both stories matter. Both people deserve accountability, but it's worth noting that one broke internally from the Democratic side, and the GOP, the party of a convicted felon who was close friends with Jeffrey Epstein and has been credibly accused by over a dozen women, tends to protect its own rather than remove them. Third, two more members, Democrat Sheila Cherfus McCormick and Republican Corey Mills, are under investigation for alleged insider trading and embezzlement, serious enough that expulsion is on the table, and they're both being investigated. Like I said, more of that on Thursday. So, here's where we are at the end of this episode. Peace talks collapsed in a single day over the weekend. The U.S. Navy is now blocking oil tankers in a move that will benefit oil companies, although probably not you. The global economy is flashing recession warnings. Congress came back to resignations, a 25th Amendment push, and a president posting himself as Jesus Christ. It's a lot. If this video helped you make any sense of what's going on in the world, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, and share it with somebody who is confused about why gas is so expensive right now. That is genuinely the best way to help this channel. If you want to go deeper, the Make It Make Sense Substack has original reporting, my Sunday Make It Make Nonsense essays, and this week's Things You Forgot from Civics class breakdown about how presidential pardons actually work. Links are in the bio. You can get that for just $5 a month. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Grant Hermes, and I'll see you next time.